I have consumed a bratwurst, a currywurst, a knockwurst. It's been sausage-tastic. And I don't mean that in a gay way, I mean that in a pork prod.
Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for the 11th of September 2013. So some of us have been lucky enough to stay in the country, others have had to go to Germany and endure. We're going to get on to that in a second. Welcome to the podcast, thank you very much for downloading and listening. I'm Phil Hinton, editor of AVForums, and joining me on this edition of the podcast, news editor Mark Hodgkinson.
We've come on holiday by mistake.
Games editor Mark Botwright.
Perfumed Ponce.
Audio reviewer Ed Selley.
I happen to think the cauliflower more beautiful than the rose.
And assistant editor Steve Withers.
As a youth, I would weep in butcher's shops.
So, like I hinted at, two of them this week have been in Germany. For IFA, it is the largest consumer electronics show in Europe. And funnily enough, it is the only major trade show that's actually open to the public as well. Massive show.
Unfortunately, in my opinion.
Massive show, held over a fairground which is massive. It even has its own park in the middle, so that gives you an idea of just how big the complex is. When I was doing my research, I actually found out that the main front entrance to the Messe is an old Nazi building that was used in that recent Tom Cruise film where he played
Valkyrie.
And when they were filming that, it's the only film that's ever been given permission to put up swastikas on the flagpoles at the front. So there you go. Bit of useless information.
Well, this year, Phil, those flagpoles were just covered in Samsung flags.
And
Thousands of Samsung flags.
LG at the south entrance, Samsung at the north.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I don't know if that's an actual improvement. It's hard to say.
So before we crack on with all the IFA news, a bit of projector news that landed just before the weekend, and it's technology that we've spoken about on the podcast in the past when we've been talking about projectors costing anywhere between £15,000 and £30,000. That is LED technology, and news from Optoma this week that they're going to release the HD91, a full LED DLP projector, for just £3,000. We put the news story up, and I've got to say I was taken aback by the amount of interest actually shown in this technology.
Yeah, I must admit, Phil, it's been a long time coming. I mean, when did you did a review 3 years ago of an LED projector? Maybe longer than that. I've done 3 or 4 over the last few years, but they've all been in the fairly toppy price bracket. For a number of reasons, I suspect, one of which being it's quite difficult to keep the LEDs at a certain temperature, which is why they have to have a lot of cooling, even though you think, well, LEDs don't run very hot, but the temperature has to be kept at a very consistent level. And that's proved problematic. But suddenly, out of the blue, Optoma come along with a $3,000 LED projector, which is staggering. I mean, I had absolutely no idea it was in the pipeline. And it took me completely by surprise when you showed me the press release on Saturday. And I'm quite excited about this because it's always been something that one of the big problems with projectors is that bulbs dim over time. They dim pretty quickly. Whereas the benefit of an LED projector is, of course, you don't get that. You get a consistent lifespan. Of course, the slight downside is that they're not necessarily as bright as bulb projectors. So it'll be interesting to see when we finally get one in for review how bright the Optoma is. How consistent the colours are, if it's got calibration controls and whether you can get them relatively accurate. But definitely interesting news from Optoma, completely out of the blue. Sort of took a lot of the attention away from IFA suddenly.
The other advantage with LED, and if you're a projector owner, you know this straight away, you have to let your bulb projector warm up. So you're not going to get optimum picture quality for at least 30 minutes to an hour. And then when you switch the off button, you have to allow the bulb to cool for at least a couple of hours before switching it back on again. So you have to leave your projector running if you're going to watch more than one film. You have to give yourself at least half an hour before you go in to watch a film. But the advantage of LED is instant on, instant off. As a projector fan, I really like this technology. I think it's fantastic technology, especially when you think about the light output. You only lose 10% over the lifespan, and the lifespan's 20,000 hours. So when you think that when you think that a bulb lifespan is about 3,000 hours, and if you're switching it on and switching it off, or you have a power cut or anything like that, you can actually damage your UHP bulb and deplete the life of it. Whereas LED instant on, instant off, I guess the main thing, Steve, is picture quality.
Yeah, absolutely. Although Optoma use DLP chips, and one of the advantages of using LEDs with DLP is that you can minimize rainbows. It's another advantage. So yeah, I mean, obviously we haven't seen it yet, so we can't comment on picture quality, but certainly it's an interesting and exciting development. You're talking about DLP, which always delivers great 3D. You've got consistent performance and lifetime of an LED rather than a bulb. And if they can deliver in terms of image accuracy, then we could be looking at a real winner here for less than $3,000.
I must have said that is a price point where it stops being of abstract interest. It's, don't get me wrong, it's not money you lose down the back of the sofa, but it is effectively real world, especially when you budget against the fact that for the entire lifespan of it, it's hopefully a sealed product. You're not budgeting for additional bulbs or anything like that. It should be good to go, and obviously it's a big if as to whether it has the required bells and whistles to last the full technical length that the panel would allow. But nonetheless, $3,000 for a couple of years fit and forget use, and with the promise of better picture quality at the same time, makes a lot of sense.
My only concern with it, and it's something that Steve can check out when he gets it in for review, where is your projector in the room, Steve? Are you like me with it on a shelf behind you?
Yeah.
Noise level. I think that could be the one downfall of this projector. Obviously with the cooling we've already mentioned, LEDs have to run at a constant temperature, so that could be its one downfall for me.
Well, at least there won't be any colour wheel though zipping around and making a higher pitch whine, which is a good thing.
Yeah, very true. Right, so let's move on to IFA. Let's stay with projectors. Sony dropped the bombshell. Steve, tell us all about it.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about surprises. Obviously, Sony were first out of the gate, beginning of 2012 with their VW500 4K projector. But that was it for a cheeky $17,000, so it's a pretty toppy price. Suddenly, at IFA on Wednesday at their press conference, they announced the new VW500, which is going to be £8,500 for a 3-chip SXRD 4K projector. So that's half the price, exactly half the price, in fact, of the VW1000. Now, this is big news because $8,500, whilst again, that's not exactly spare change, that's a very attractive price point for a 4K projector. You're talking about a degree of future proofing here. It's got HDMI 2.0 inputs. It's 4K panel. It's actually the proper cinema 4K panel. So it does full DCI specification resolution as well as UHD resolution, which is slightly different. It's got most of the features that are on the VW1000. I did actually ask Sony, I said, okay, Sony, how have you cut the price in half? And obviously one of the major areas where they've cut the price in half is in terms of the lens. The lens on the VW1000, anyone who's seen it, it looks like any photograph of it, it's been taken with a fisheye lens because it's got this massive lens at the front, but the lens actually is that big. It's all glass, very heavy, very precise. Now, obviously, the VW500 doesn't have quite the same kind of lens. Whilst the VW1000 has an 18-piece glass lens, this has a plastic front with a 13-piece lens assembly inside, which is glass inside. So it's considerably lighter and obviously considerably cheaper, which helps cut the price down. But otherwise, looking at most of the specifications, a lot of it is the same and or better, possibly, than in some cases the VW1000. Now, certainly, having seen a demo of it, because obviously the first thing I wanted to do as soon as I heard about it was I've got to see this in action. So I got a private demo with Sony on the Thursday, and they were showing some 4K natural history footage on a very big screen. This was a really big screen, and it looked absolutely stellar. And having been lucky enough to review the VW1000 and seen it in action a couple of times, I couldn't say it looked any different. So, you've got to wonder, even though they're going to be selling the two concurrently, I don't suppose anyone's going to be buying the VW1000 now where you can get equally as good performance for half the price.
Somebody get the oxygen for Steve. You're going to breathe at some point.
I don't know. I think he's mastered cycladic breathing. That was quite impressive.
Well, in all seriousness, this is big news because dominating that area of the market over the last few years has been JVC with the DILA projectors and eShift. This is a big game changer, actually coming in with a native 4K panel and a full 4K panel at that. It's going to be interesting to see how the competition stack up at that price point.
Yeah, it's going to be. I mean, At the moment, Sony had the market to themselves. There's only 2 projectors available, and they're both Sonys. Now, I'm assuming that other manufacturers will be launching 4K projectors between now and the end of the year. Don't know any details yet, but I think it's a safe bet that some will. The question is going to be, what price point are they going to release them at? I mean, they could be sitting there now, hurriedly checking the numbers, thinking, can we compete at 8,500? Because that is, I mean, I'm being honest here. I'm thinking, hang on a minute, I quite fancy one at that price point.
That's X75 money.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's a 1080p projector. Yeah, fantastic picture quality, but it's not 4K.
It could be a statement of intent. Almost certainly, in many ways, it already is a statement of intent. But on a wider and more aggressive platform, it could simply be trying to tell a number of smaller companies it's effectively just an enormous two-fingered don't even try. I imagine that. You don't want to hypothesize what level of money Sony make at 8.5K, but you've got to assume that a fair degree of economies of scale and other advantages that just won't be there for certain companies are going to be present. And you may see a number of brands who up to now have been active in projectors maybe not even make the jump.
So let's give Steve a break to catch his breath. Mark, bring us up to date on what 4K TVs were released and some interesting price points.
Yeah. Where do we start here? There was, I guess we'll start at the start, which was Panasonic with their WT600 LED, which was notable for being the first TV to include HDMI 2.0. For the uninitiated, that opens up it's one of the pieces in the jigsaw for the 4K Ultra HD revolution. So that was big news for Panasonic. And then I couldn't quite remember the chronological order, but I think it was perhaps Toshiba next with three models, a 58, a 65 and an 84 inch, starting at 2,999, so $3,000 for a 58 inch 4K TV. Just getting, the price war has begun before the products are really out. And then we had, what else did we have? We had a Philips, didn't we, on the Friday? A 65 inch, and this is crazy money, 4,500 for the 9000 series of Ultra HD TVs. So what was the VT65 when it came out? About just a bit less than that, 3,999 was it?
That's about the same price point.
Crazy. So I mean, going into next year, we're really looking at the top end of the market is probably going to be dominated by 4K TVs. Sony's dropped their prices again, so I think they were down as low as 3,299 now for the 55. It's all just kicking off.
I'm going to pour some cold water over all this. They're just LED TVs.
There is that.
That is true, but I've got to say, remember, Phil, when we went to CES a few years ago when 3D was just kicking off and everywhere you looked, it was all just 3D.
Yeah.
Well, that was what it was like at IFA this year. It was
3D?
just 4K.
Oh, right.
Everywhere.
And there is another facet to this as well, which doesn't really come out in the press releases. Steve, did you visit the Taiwan Opportunity Hall?
I did not visit the Taiwan Opportunity Hall.
Well, more fool you is all I can say. But joking aside, as well as all of these headline releases, if you went to the China Hall, the Taiwan Hall, so on and so forth, the number of unknown branded 4K TVs on display, 15 or 20 different companies doing it. And what this means is supermarkets.
Yeah, I think that is a lot of what's driving it, Ed. They're aware of the Chinese and the Taiwanese brands coming in and just beating them on price ridiculously. I mean, the TCL, the Chinese brand, they have a 55-inch 4K TV for less than 1,500 quid.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, on the stands, the images they were displaying, it was marginally more challenging than them showing the test card. And as I don't have the benefit of the same training and experience that you guys do, I can't make any objective comment on how far behind they are. But the long and the short of it is that Mr. Tesco's and Asda and all the rest of it, they will have the wherewithal to be selling 4K TVs for astonishingly low money with whatever branding they choose to stick on it in much less time than we think.
It's interesting you bring that up because that's something that myself and Steve noticed at CES at the beginning of the year. Hisense took over the old Microsoft stand, and if you've ever been to CES, the old Microsoft stand is massive, and they took over that whole stand. and they had 4K TVs, they had LED, LCD TVs. All of them looked pretty spectacular, to be honest, in terms of design, and in terms of picture quality. They didn't look as bad as you would think for a cheaper made product. And you got to think, well, where are they saving the money? They're obviously saving the money in the labour, and a lot of the panels that they're using are the same panels that Toshiba, Panasonic, and Philips are using. So
a lot of the panels are Taiwanese
or
Chinese produced, aren't they? So.
And you've got to bear in mind that these companies, in particular, obviously, I'm not for a second suggesting, Phil, that buying a stand that formerly occupied by Microsoft is going to be cheap. But when you look at the global marketing spend of the known brands, that's a significant chunk of the cost that they are then in turn offering products to us, the consumer. And let's face it, if you're Unknown Industries Corp of Guangzhou, that makes no odds to you. That's not how you go about selling your product, and that's going to have a huge effect on the bottom line, even before labour and other considerations come into play.
There'll be Chinese brands amongst the mainstream within 10 years easily, I would have thought.
I'd have thought so.
Well, just look at Samsung and LG. Where were they 10 years ago?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I did actually ask the CEO of Philips, TP Vision Philips, Martin de Vries. I asked him about the pricing on 4K TVs, and he said to me, look, Steve, basically they want to monetize this as fast as possible, and the way to do that is through volume, not through margin. So he said you'll see prices drop very quickly, in the assumption that they're going to therefore sell a lot more units. So it's partly, I think, the Chinese influence or pressure from the Chinese manufacturers, but also I think it's a desire on the part of the Western manufacturers or the more traditional manufacturers to monetize their gains as fast as possible on new technology.
The other interesting thing is that we got an email through today from the CEA for CES Press Day. They've finalised the lineup, and for the first year ever, Hisense have a major slot on Press Day for a press conference. That's them moving up the ladder pretty quickly from last year.
That's a statement of intent, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. So lots of 4K TVs, lots of price cuts coming. I guess the only surprising thing, really, Steve, was the Panasonic 65-inch, the WT600, £5,500. That's a lot higher than everybody else.
Yeah, it won't be that for very long, I suspect. I think they've misstepped. They've miscalculated on their pricing there. I mean,
HDMI 2 isn't worth that much, is it?
Well, no. I mean, first of all, Sony have already come out and said that they can because the connector would appear to be identical for HDMI 2.0. It's not a different shaped connector to 1.4. They seem to think that they can just upgrade their existing 4K TVs with a firmware update. So if that's the case, then that isn't much of an advantage on the part of Panasonic. Don't get me wrong, it's a great TV. I had a good look at it. It's very nice. Typical Panasonic. It's really well made and really well designed. Picture looked great. But as you said, Phil, ultimately it's just an LCD TV, albeit with a high resolution panel. What really excited me, and you've seen these already at CES in January, but they were on display again. What excited me was the 4K OLEDs, because that is a real glimpse of the future. And what TV's holy grail, if you like, the higher resolution with the better picture quality of an OLED.
Did you get to see the LG Monster, Steve?
Yeah, I did. I did have a look at the LG. I mean, there was a bit of Willy measurement going on, I think, sometimes at these shows where everyone has to one up another with a bigger TV, and obviously LG won this year by pulling up a 77-inch curved OLED, 4K OLED screen, which looked great. Pure prototype, of course. I mean, they can't barely make the 55-inch and 10-inch keyboards, never mind 4K OLEDs at 77 inches. But they all had them on display. Panasonic were very keen to point out that there's a second generation 4K OLED panel with no Sony in it whatsoever. It's pure Panasonic this time. Sony had theirs on display, of course. Samsung had one on display, which was the first time we'd seen that. And that was one of their big announcements at the show. So it's definitely coming. And looking at, again, it's when you see a picture with those kind of incredibly deep blacks and the extra and the additional resolution and the brightness and the vibrancy of the image, you just think, wow, that looks incredible. I can't wait for those to get mainstream. In the meantime, of course, we do have finally 1080p OLEDs hitting the shops. Most of them in a curved variety, which is not only we always assumed that was just because you could do that. But for some bizarre reason, both Sony and Samsung also have launched curved LCD TVs. Why? I have no idea.
Apparently, the one thing I can think of, I've been racking my brains. Does it help with reflections coming in from the side? You know, with the glossy screens.
It's very hard to judge in an environment where everything's lit from above by halogen floodlights.
I'm trying to talk it up here because I think he's just doing it because I mean, Samsung came out and said it's difficult to do and therefore it's going to be expensive. So it's just it's a fashion thing, surely. I mean,
I've got a great anecdote about this one earlier today. I'll spare. I won't say which of the manufacturers it was, but they had a slightly harassed-looking guy next to these curved screens, and if someone came up and asked him a question in German, he made it abundantly clear that he was there to speak to English people. But when English people turned up, he made it very clear he didn't speak any English. And I think by this stage of the show, I think he was just fed up with people going, "What's it for? What does it do? I don't understand." And
I have to say, though, whilst I was, somewhat dismissive in the last couple of weeks about curved OLEDs, having got a good look at the Samsung, particularly the Samsung curved OLED, I've got a good look at it up close. It's a bloody lovely looking telly. I thought it was really nicely designed. And the stand, the whole way it's designed looks gorgeous. The curve's only very slight. Like I think you said it was 5%, didn't you, Phil? It's not much of a curve to it, really. Yeah, I thought it was an absolutely gorgeous looking TV.
Right.
Picture looked fantastic. And I had a try out with their dual view, and you can actually watch two completely different 3D images simultaneously. So you've got like glasses on, you press a button, and there's one.
You'll need
set
another
of images.
person, obviously.
Well, I assume it's there to save failed marriages, so you can watch two different things without having to talk to each other. There's a little earpiece as well, so you can listen to the audio. But honestly, absolutely no crosstalk in the 3D you were watching.
Yeah, but Steve,
also no crossover from the stuff you're watching from the other signal, if you like.
Yeah, but Steve, you need a partner for one of those TVs and that technology.
I'm not saying
what use
I
is
want
that to
it
you?
for that purpose. I'm just staggered it. It's like magic. The technology is just incredible. That's how incredibly fast the response times are on OLED. You can do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just amazing.
Yeah. Okay, well, they say that audio makes up 50% of the experience. So, IFA, audio, Ed.
I'm afraid it didn't make up 50% of my show experience. I don't want to sound like a doom-monger against all of this exciting 4K news, but the summation of groundbreaking stuff that happened, if we separate from products, I think the only thing that happened which is in any way sort of useful going forward is that some nice hardworking chaps, a company called Frontier Silicon, have managed to make a way. They've got if you are a small company and you make a product and you want to put Spotify on board and build it in, they now have a more sort of off-the-shelf solution rather than you having to code it all yourself and with all
Spotify Connect.
Well, if you've noticed, there's been a sudden upsurge in the number of products which are all of a sudden are supporting Spotify. Behind the scenes, these people are doing a lot of the work. And as someone who's a fanatical Spotify user, best £10 a month I spend, the number of companies which should now have access to a solution which works and they don't have to invest a huge amount of time customizing it for their own requirements. And that otherwise, in terms of stuff I saw that was new, awkward silence. If I'm honest, we don't get me wrong. There's at least another 72,000 pairs of headphones, which I can set about reviewing one pair at a time. And I've got to say, on the Yamaha stand, that pre-power that they've released, processor power, I should say, it does look fantastic. It has all the right socketry. HDMI 2.0, they were unable to be drawn on whether they could do anything with that, so I don't know, but it's beautifully made. It feels special in a way that arguably even the last generation of sort of flagship Yamaha stuff, the last Yamaha AV amp that I used that felt genuinely really something was the Z9. I don't ever feel the Z11 felt quite the same way. This feels like old school Yamaha again. It feels like you could drop it out of a fourth story window pick it up off the ground and it would still turn on and work. And it looks fantastic and it feels fantastic. And it must have said that Yamaha stand was of all the hi-fi and audio manufacturers that I on at the show, theirs was the one that sort of exuded a confidence about what they're doing, where they're going. They've got some slightly crazy products. They're bringing ambient lighting back into audio products, and I'm sure that's going to be an interesting one when it finally hits the shelves. But no, that was good. But otherwise, I'm not going to lie. I mean, we were joking at the last podcast that I'd give you a white goods update. This morning, I actually devoted an hour to pottering around the vast Siemens and all the other kitchen people down on the first floor. And in many ways, I saw more stuff that I actually wanted for my own home there than I did in the audio stuff. And I thought that was quite sad in a way.
There was some very nice stuff down there, though.
Oh God, there was.
I
was saying in the walk before we went live. As I say, the one of the more exciting things for me was 5 new Nespresso capsule things, new flavors for the machines. And in the interest of research for AVForums, I consumed all 5 of them. That may have made me a little bit jittery and irritable, but that's by the by. There's a Colombian one, and I mean that it's Colombian coffee. It doesn't have powdered self-esteem in it as well, but that was really, really good. And then otherwise, there was a huge, in terms of random bizarre stuff to spot, there was a huge rise in the number of stands where people were randomly vacuuming walls.
Yeah, I did notice a lot of vacuum cleaners stuck to walls. Now, I'm not sure about you, Ed, but I've never vacuumed a wall in my life.
I don't mean to sound like a bloke, the Lord Downton Abbey here. I generally leave that to the cleaner personally, but no, I've never seen her doing that either.
Sorry, with an attachment or actually
the whole unit was stuck
they
to the wall.
They were cleaning. They were using, and they were demonstrating suction and stuff like. I think some of the subtleties were lost in the English to German.
You don't want to suck that hard, do you? You never get off the carpet.
Well, this podcast does suck that hard sometimes, but we'll go to that.
And the other one, it has to be said. I think I took a photo of it. In the most bizarre. Something lost in translation. The Karcher pressure washer people had a little stand in one of the sort of thoroughfare passages, and all the imagery was of babies. And if you sort of put it together, it suggested that the latest and greatest way of keeping your infant clean is to just pressure wash the little
effective, but not particularly kind.
No, but that's sort of the message that they were giving, and I wasn't able to pin someone down for long enough to try and get what they were gunning at with all the children pictures. And it's like
Karcher.
Yeah, what happens if you actually go at a child with a jet washer? You'll
have opportunity to find out soon enough.
The only other thing. On a semi-serious note, more product-related, not audio, but product-related, Sony had some of their the latest generation Xperia Android smartphones, which is the first time I've been within fondling distance of one of those, and I really liked it. I thought that as a piece of industrial design, it had a lot going for it. It moved with an immediacy and a responsiveness that I haven't really seen in many Android products. And the fact that you can leave it overnight in a glass of water. I mean, for the confused and the confused.
Teeth.
Well, no, they are astonishingly waterproof.
Yeah, they are. No, totally. You could take. I saw photographs of someone showing me that they taken with their Xperia in underwater in a swimming pool. That's how waterproof they are. Obviously, they're designed for people who get drunk, drop them down toilets, or into pints of lager, both of which they could survive.
And speaking as a drunk person, I salute that. I think that's a fabulous thing. And not only that, it doesn't feel like, remember the Sony Sports Walkmans that were also semi-waterproof, and they did that by coating them in about half an inch of rubber, which was vaguely kinky and very hard to fit in your pocket. They don't feel bulky, they feel rather nice, and I was quite impressed by that.
So if you're listening, Sony, Ed would like a phone, I'd like a projector.
Can I just go on record and say, if I drop my phone into a toilet, I don't really want to keep it?
Well, no, you should be okay, because urine is sterile. So
there's a whole subtext to this. This leads on neatly as a little segue into the pub-based depravity test. Are you familiar with this?
No.
But I think you're about to tell us.
Right, okay. If you're in a pub you haven't been to before and you think this is a bit rough, when you decide to break the seal and go to the loo, what you do is place a 50p coin in the urinal. And if you come back and the 50p coin has gone, repeat with a 20p coin. And so on and so forth, and see what the lowest denomination piece of change that someone is prepared to fish out of a toilet is, and that will give you a useful indicator into the the depravity of that pub.
I think if you're starting at 50p, that's a bit low, surely.
Yeah, I think it to be a quid before I put my hand into a pool of piss.
You drop it in there,
Right, whip round time.
But no, I've had many an amusing night with that. On one pub location I won't confirm, we got down to 5p. So yeah, we've never gone that low yet, but I'm sure there's a part in the UK where I'm sure that someone would fish a penny out.
Right, just to wrap up on IFA sausage experiences.
I would say it's been fantastic for that. Bratwurst yesterday, spot on. Then I had a currywurst a little bit later on in the evening when I, had a couple of preparing beers before one of those. And then this morning, to my delight, in the hotel, which I'm not making this up, the hotel was called the Hotel Titanic. They had knockwurst for breakfast. Brilliant, with scrambled eggs. So I didn't actually have to eat for the rest of the show. I'd consumed about 7,500 calories before I left the hotel. It was fantastic. So
I had my first currywurst, and then I had a second one with some chips.
There you go. You see, they are fantastic, aren't they?
Though I was a bit annoyed because I had the currywurst, and then I went down to the Samson white goods stand, and they had 3 Michelin-starred chefs cooking up a storm, and I stuffed my face down there as well. It's like the best food you will ever have at some kind of trade show, with a couple of glasses of champagne. I couldn't complain about that either. So,
well,
food-wise, I was well covered.
This is the difference, because Steve went on the press day. Me, man of the people, I was there with everyone else.
I've done that. It's God, what an experience that is.
You just got to bear in mind that the Germans regard an elbow in the back as "excuse me," and that if you get into the habit of that, you're fine.
Well, funnily enough, the year that me and Steve were there filming, once they'd been hit across the back by a tripod a few times, they tended to get out your way.
Absolutely. You bear in mind, don't knock the children or the elderly over, and you're fine. Everything else is fair game. I made the mistake of trying to do a semi sort of what I'm used to for queuing for a ticket machine with London Transport this morning, and no, I quickly realised that if I embarked on that, I would still be there trying to buy a ticket. So no, I gave up on that and just embarked on a spot of casual brutality.
So you can't push children out of the way, but you can use a Karcher pressure washer on them.
Well, this is where, as I say, there's clearly some subtleties of Germanic civilization I've got to iron out yet. So
they vacuum walls. And they use Karcher pressure washers on their children.
And they like very large sausages.
I have to say, Steve,
it doesn't sound bad, I'll be honest.
And they're one of the biggest economies in the world as well.
Yeah,
so
they're doing something right.
Yeah.
I have to say, Steve, some of the promo girls I saw this year, if I ever need to start a captive breeding program, IFA 2014 will be where I start. Thank you very much.
It's eugenics in action, isn't it?
Well, except it would be undermined by the fact that I'd be the male side. So it would probably undo most of the good work.
Do they still have them?
What, promo girls?
Yeah, the electronic shows.
Thousands
of them, and they were fit as a butcher's dog.
How is it that the gaming sphere has gone past that, and yet mainstream electronics still holds on to it?
I don't know.
Well, they've realised that the people that play games, basically virgins have got no chance, and therefore, what's the point?
Well, no, you jest, but a number of hi-fi companies used to use promo girls, and they've stopped because some of their customers are so terrified of women that they won't actually take a brochure being handed out by an attractive lady. Whereas if you use a metal holder, they will, and that explains some of the abysmal aesthetics a modern day hi-fi show.
I'll take anything handed out by an attractive lady.
And cutting
VD,
herpes.
anything.
Yep,
Eva,
quite, yeah.
that must
Exotic
have meant
diseases,
you
the lot.
were unable to move by about 4 halls in. You'd have had about 80 kilos of paperwork with you, sure.
No, there weren't any around. But most of the stands weren't even finished when I was there on Wednesday and Thursday. It was only on Friday that they actually opened up the doors, and suddenly we were mobbed by half of Germany. Before that, it was actually pleasantly quiet, and you could get around and do stuff without working your way through hordes of people.
I've only ever been to for hordes of people. I don't know any better.
You could go on press day. You are press. It's like only through choice.
Right,
So-
can we move on?
If you
What are we doing?
Games news next.
All right, fair enough.
So moving on, and some games news. A bit of a strange announcement from Microsoft because it was on press day for IFA. So most of the world's journalists were in Berlin when they announced the launch date for the Xbox One.
Yep, November 22nd through all 13 launch territories. I think everyone was perhaps just hoping that the fact that they'd held on to the information for so long that they would have something up their sleeve. And it seems like basically the FIFA 14 bundle was probably all they really had. And so it's pretty much what people expected towards the end of November, the same as with the PS4, which will be out 15th of November in the US, and UK will get it on the 29th. So it's just kind of between the two. It's nice to get it simultaneously throughout all territories, but beyond that, there's not really much of a story there.
There was a CPU boost, wasn't there? They just announced that just prior to them going in production. So the CPU's been clocked from 1.6 to 1.7 gigahertz now, 10% increase. Don't know what that'll mean, but that's something.
It seems a bit of an odd one, though, given the fact that they've kind of skirted around giving, legitimate details or anything really specific about the hardware up until that point. And, they were seemingly trying to get away with what most people thought was pretty standard protocol, which is just keep quiet. If you're perhaps the lower spec console, just keep quiet. And most people assume that most multi-platform games will be the same.
Yeah, I think it was just totally conscious of the internet saying, Sony's got the more powerful console, so it's something to try and address that. It's still more powerful though, isn't it?
Yeah, I think though, ultimately, end of the day, it still comes down to who the developers are and what they make use of, what they've got in front of them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was never going to be a big difference, and like you say, cross-platform will all look pretty much identical throughout the lifespan, so it's of no big concern really.
I was going to say, content must be the big thing here. The games, the actual game titles that are going to be available on release, and looking through things and looking at comments on the forums, it seems to be that the Xbox has the real draw there in terms of gaming. Personal
preference, if I had to pick, I would probably say Xbox on titles. Slightly, but then I'm a sucker for Roman things. So I like the look of Rise.
I like the look of the steampunk Victorian thing with Jack the Ripper.
Oh yeah,
that's from Sony. I think that looked quite saucy. I could be up for a bit of that action.
There's great looking titles on both. You can't go wrong, can you?
So what does our in-house games expert think, Mark? Which one is it, the PS4 or the Xbox?
Which is the strongest? Ultimately, I think that the first 6 to 9 months are going to be defined almost wholly by multi-platform titles. I think that you will see them run away in the charts as much as people want to try and find something, as much as people want to try and convince themselves that Killzone is actually a proper AAA series that could be held in the same regard as a Halo or something like that. Ultimately, Dead Rising on the Xbox One looks like it's gone a bit drab and it's kind of run out of a few ideas. People are going to be picking up Battlefield 4, they'll pick up the latest FIFA, they'll pick up the latest Assassin's Creed and Call of Duty, and those will be at the top of the charts.
Yeah.
But can we get on to more interesting news?
Yeah, of course we can. And let me guess, Vita TV.
Yes, Vita TV. It's very interesting simply because Sony announced a Vita Slim, so therefore they've increased battery life, and it's going to be Wi-Fi only because no one bothered with 3G. There was no point there. It's going to have 1 gig memory in it. It's going to be lighter. It's going to be thinner. A bit sad they've lost the OLED screen.
Oh, I was not aware of that.
Yeah, they changed just to LCD. So, but to be honest, if it comes in at anywhere near the Japanese price point, which should be around about £120, they're on to a real winner. And it seems like just a kind of great riposte to the 2DS, which is looking increasingly like a kind of child's tablet now. But it's
with
the
the
Vita
integration, isn't it? It's the integration with the PS4 in particular, isn't it? It's quite exciting. At those
Yeah.
kind of prices, it's that option, isn't it, of having the second screen experience.
Exactly. It's a brilliant idea, and I think Sony have finally realised that, in fact, they made great handheld consoles. They never perhaps got as many games on them as they needed to. They never shifted as many as they needed to. But if you, like with Apple, if you kind of tie people into some kind of an ecosystem of products, they will follow that chain. And the Vita TV looks like it's going to be the kind of perfect conduit for all of that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it on the face of it, you think, well, perhaps is it just another streaming box? But it's going to play PSP games, it'll play Vita games. It seems almost like they were redesigning the Vita, and at some point someone said, well, we can do an HDMI out and we could play Vita games on the big screen. And someone said, hang on, let's hold on to that feature. We can put that into a separate box, a streaming box. We can put remote play with the PS4 on it, and it's almost sorting out the whole second screen, second room problem that everyone has with a major console, which is sooner or later you'll find yourself kicked out to another room.
Relegated to another room, yeah, absolutely. I think it's a fantastic little product, well, hopefully. Yeah, and like you say, it's the probably a Trojan horse for Sony Entertainment Network services, so the Video Unlimited and Music Unlimited services. They want you to subscribe to that. Probably maybe another loss leader. Was it £63 roughly in Japan, basic model?
Yeah, but there again, the PS4 is going to be about $250, I think, in Japan. So
right.
You'd
so
assume
it's
it'll
going to be more
probably
like around the Apple TV price, £100, around about that.
The only real, sorry, go on.
No, I've forgotten what I was going to say anyway.
All right, I was the only real kind of slight drawback with it is that it does kind of bring into light the problem that Sony had with pushing their own proprietary memory, which was, they've stuck with it through the Vita, and it costs a hellish price in comparison to SD cards. And if that's, I'm pretty sure that'll be in the Vita TV as well, because if they want people to be able to play a Vita game and then switch that straight over to playing, from their Vita onto the Vita TV, they'd have to keep the same memory card system. So it would be nice if there was some kind of expansion there where there's an SD card slot or something.
Right, cloud storage though through PSN, through PlayStation Plus.
Yeah, could be.
Maybe. I mean, that's the sell. I mean, I'm a subscriber to PlayStation Plus. Not that I get much chance to use it these days, but it's £30 a year. I think I paid for that, and you get free titles, and that applies to the Vita as well, doesn't it? So, for your £30 a year or so, you can basically get a free rental service for the Vita TV.
Oh, exactly. I just think it's a really, really smart way to draw people in. It's a really smart way to get people, to kind of join in, to pick up the Vita. Then you get the Vita TV, you've got the PS4, and it's all going to link together. I just think, thumbs up all round.
And depending on what content they can deliver, say the likes of iPlayer, Netflix, and all the rest of it, if they can deliver on that like they do through their TVs, because they've got fantastic amount of video on demand services through Bravia TVs and Blu-ray players, and if they can deliver that and the gaming experience with a proper controller, it's one in the eye for the Apple TV.
Oh, definitely, and particularly if you consider the fact that Sony traditionally haven't stuck that kind of thing, the streaming services, behind a paywall, so it may not even be linked to that.
Yeah.
So make it even more attractive.
Well, that's it. Yeah, with the TVs and the Blu-ray players and the boxes, you don't have to pay subscription to Sony Entertainment Network. It's there if you want it, and they feature it, front and center, of course. But there are other services there that are independent of Sony and don't require a Sony subscription.
In short, we like it, Phil.
Yeah, I want one.
It actually sounds quite appealing. So there you go.
This podcast is turning into one long begging list for Sony, isn't it?
I
think they don't like us.
I think
it makes a change from criticising LG.
Yeah, this is the Christmas want list edition of the podcast.
That was what I was thinking.
I know, I want something more expensive. I can afford one of these.
At the Sony press conference, I was just thinking, I want everything on that stage for Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, Sony's event was amazing. Product fest, wasn't it? Product after product. After product
it was quite orgiastic in that sense.
Yeah, but I think the big spend ticket goes to Samsung though. I mean, they must have spent tens of millions.
Oh yeah, no, they must have spent a literal fortune, because they had obviously the gigantic AV stand, gigantic white goods stand, and that massive unpacking event.
And they had to round up a load of crackheads in New York to get them in Times Square, didn't they?
Well, it's a suspiciously large number of Koreans in that crowd.
Yeah, there was. It was a very funny-looking crowd.
Yeah, and then we had to put up with Jason Bradbury for half an hour, which I could have done without.
Yeah, let's go there. We're going to come back and talk about the tech in a sec. So, as we hinted at, the big launch was the Unpacked event. The launch of Galaxy Gear. Finally, the smartwatch comes to town. Sony launched theirs as well, but I think that's the one area Sony definitely dropped the ball. It just looks ugly. It looks like something from the 1980s. You know, when the original Casio digital watches, it just looked absolutely awful. But the Galaxy Gear, apart from the holding your hand up to your ear,
looking like a secret agent.
Yeah, making your phone call and so on. I've got to say, it looked better than I thought it was going to look. It looks wise, it looked okay, and I quite liked the different faces that you could put for your watch. You know, the old hands or digital, and they had quite a few variations on that. As a device, I think I'll pass. I didn't see anything there that appealed to me, especially the fact that you have to have a Galaxy phone in your pocket for the thing to work, and it's going to be £300.
Yeah, that price.
I'm sorry, what? I didn't realise that. I mean, I assumed that this was some sort of, natty child's toy.
That is.
That's what it looks like.
£300.
£279, I think it's going to come in at.
Yeah.
So more or less
If you are canny and you go to some of the second-hand watch dealers in the Burlington Arcade, just off Knightsbridge, which not a cheap part of London, £279 will buy you a watch which A, isn't made of plastic, and B, will never ever lose a penny of the money you've just spent on it. And furthermore, they both tell the time.
Yeah, and of course, a real watch doesn't run out of battery after 23 hours.
No,
but does it have a camera in it though?
How do you recharge it?
You're going to look pretty cool recharging it. I was just thinking.
I don't know about you, Mark. I don't really have this. Not only does my phone take pictures already, but I also have this device called a camera.
Yeah.
Not once have I pointed my wrist
megapixel
impotently at an object and thought, God, I wish I could take a photo with this watch.
It's going to take shocking photos, isn't it?
It's the voyeur's dream, though.
I was going to say it's perfect charter, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And it looks
that
like
was the only reason I could think of using it.
Who's going to stand next to anyone at a urinal again?
Yeah, and you charge it up with wrist movement.
Actually, there is a nice crossover there. So there's Seiko Kinetic, isn't there?
So I mean, the whole reason they spent all this money is to get a week ahead of Apple, who hold their event this week, and we're likely to see the new iPhones being announced. Talk of another iPad and some other bits and pieces, and more than likely they're going to launch their watch.
I don't think it was tomorrow, the watch. I think it's. I think that's later down the line. I think that's not tomorrow or the day after, but rather next year.
Where are you getting your information from?
Well, the same as anyone. The end of the internet.
Every journalist said to me in Berlin, and we won't be seeing that till next year.
Do you think?
I don't think it's next year.
Well, Nissan have just announced one as well, haven't they?
Yeah, that only works with. I'm not very good at cars. Nismo, is that right? Nissan Nismo.
All right.
Well, they're the tuning division of
so
Nissan,
the Galaxy Gear, you have to have Galaxy S3 or S4 in your pocket.
Oh, it's a bit cheaper than having to buy a f***ing car.
Yeah, I was just going to say
is it styled
Nissan,
by the same people that did the Nissan Duke? Because that would make it possibly the ugliest piece of clothing in the history of the universe.
It didn't look too bad, did it? I think it's got some biometric feedback, hasn't it, about how your heart's doing as you're racing around the corners. And obviously, the big problem
got a
is
pedometer in it.
You don't want to be looking at your wrist as you're doing anything dangerous. You want to be looking at the road, really. So I really don't get this Nissan watch. And it gives you some information about how your car's performing, but surely you can get all this from
driving it.
Yeah.
I just looking at the dashboard.
I hope they are going to give them away with the Nissan cars. I hope they're not actually seriously going to try and sell you these things.
Obviously, don't get me wrong, they make some fabulous cars, but if you look at the tat that Ferrari have official Ferrari merchandise. Some of the stuff there, I mean, it's embarrassing. It looks like it's come off Bargain Hunt. Maybe it's just car manufacturers going in for a penny, in for a pound. It's time for a tatathon, and they're just hoping for miracles. But the very idea of a watch that you need to charge every single day is just facile. Maybe this is my first getting old moment.
It just doesn't extend the use of the phone anymore, than it's really worth. I mean, how hard
as you say,
have you actually tried putting your wrist? I did this the other day. It's not going to work for a podcast particularly well, but try putting your wrist up and holding it where you would have to speak into the Galaxy Gear where the microphone is, and it becomes very, very uncomfortable very, very quickly. And
has anyone else seen? It was on a couple of years ago on various channels. There's a Sunrise manga called Big O, and the bloke summons this massive bollocks off robot by yelling into his watch, and I just think everyone's going to look like that.
Yeah.
Although he looked much cooler, because at the end of the day he got a giant robot and you just sit there shouting into your watch. So
you don't get a robot free with a Galaxy.
Order a pizza.
You could be really cool and actually hold your wrist up, but then extend your pinky out and your thumb up.
That's what you're going to end up doing, isn't it? It's almost inevitable. There's going to be a lot of people looking.
I told you on the previous podcast, unless the thing makes me invisible, I don't want it.
If they could brand the Nismo one like the Knight Rider watch, then that might be all right.
It looks pretty cool. It looks a lot like the Galaxy Gear, to be fair, but it looks pretty cool. But beyond that, I don't get it.
It's a world I don't get. I mean, admittedly, my watch was made in 1988, so I am probably not the person to talk to about this. But I don't get it.
What I don't understand is this whole drive for wearable tech. I don't get it.
It's a problem looking for a solution, isn't it? I think.
But I'm telling you, in the next couple of years,
it's pretty much looking for a problem. Sorry.
Yeah. Pretty much everything that you're seeing now, I'm sure, will come out cheaper and more interesting with Android versions. I mean, you've already got the Pebble, which was Kickstarter funded.
Yeah, but it's ugly as hell.
I don't know, Ben from the games team. He's just got his. He pledged. He's got an early version, and he's pretty pleased with it.
He's got a real problem with drinking.
That does even less than the Galaxy Gear, though. You can't even make calls on that one, can you?
No, but you control your phone.
Why do you need to control your phone? Pick it up.
Yeah, I know, but what if you've got it in your pocket and you're playing music? What if you want to change tracks just by poking at your watch? You can get it to do anything as well because it's Android,
I do worry about Ben. I mean, he seems to stay up quite late at night drinking and then ordering stuff and pledging for stuff.
Come on.
Well, now
I know, obviously,
Phil,
I know we leave you out of this, but we all have our late at night, maybe had a beer too many go-to website where you wake up the following morning and you think, I bought what?
I've got to say,
just me.
That's just you, Ed.
I have never done that. I've got to say, I've never done that. I've never purchased something while drunk because I'm teetotal.
Actually, I bought my first Wii one.
Well, I know you're teetotal, so I know you don't get. But I mean, I've woken up and I've ordered £175 worth of records unseen. And many years ago, actually, I wasn't so much drunk as incredibly fatigued, but I got into a bidding war on an early 90s Pioneer Class A amplifier and ended up dropping 900 quid, sight unseen, on a Japanese import Pioneer A09.
You know, Ed, normal people, they just look at porn and fall asleep.
Well, what can I say? I just don't diversify.
He does that well, but he spends an awful lot before.
That classifies as it.
With a Glock 18 next to my bed, which was a bit of a surprise.
What was that?
Oh, what, 18, sorry?
Oh, what?
Glock. A gun.
Oh, right. I thought you said something else.
No, a Glock, not.
Yeah, pass my commiserations on to Ben, Mark. That's the Ouya that he bought as well, didn't he?
Yes, he did. But there again,
is he the only person keeping Kickstarter going?
Democratization, Phil. It's the future.
Or fleecing everybody. Depending on how you look at it.
I'll be honest. I was tempted to buy a Pebble.
I was at first. Then I learned what they do.
I saw it at CES and I thought, yeah, that's quite interesting. And but then the more I see it, the more I think that's just ugly, and it doesn't do half the things you really want it to do. So
I'm assuming I can't play records on it.
Not easily.
You use it as a stylus.
You can get an attachment.
A wearable record player on a backpack or in a pram. Then that sells to you.
Yeah,
I'm not joking. That's all. I'm afraid that's been seen and done. If you were to do a search for the splendidly named Audio Technica Soundburger,
do you just spend all your spare time on the internet? Looking for obscure things.
Of time on the internet, it must be said, yeah. But come on, you reap the benefits of it. I shared with you the Moby song, which you loved, and then we found the Steve Withers theme tune, which is "Night at the Outpost" by Scat Bros. Which is like, if you like, this is the audio version of Theodore Rex. It's one of those. It's a song. Put it like this: it makes the Village People's YMCA sound like something deathly. It sounds like Radiohead by comparison. It's indisputably the campest record ever made.
Would love that.
And obviously, in light of Steve Withers and his rock fascination, I just think it's I think you need it as a ringtone, sir.
We need the Withers version of the Moby video. That's what we need.
I look like Moby, so I'm off to a good start there.
Well, this is the thing. It's identify your bald men at a glance.
I thought you were. Well, I can't remember what company it was in front of the camera. A Panasonic, but it wasn't you. Just another bald bloke.
There were an awful lot of bald blokes, wasn't
there? In that room, there was an incredible amount of Withers alikes.
With overhead lighting as well.
Yeah.
It was blinding.
Must have made flash photography a trouble.
Moby, 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 Michael Stipe, Moby, 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 Michael Stipe, Michael Stipe, Michael Stipe, Moby, Moby, Michael Stipe, Moby, 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 Michael Chiklis, Bruce Willis, Bruce Willis, Bruce Willis.
Isn't that on Never Mind the Bus Stop?
Moby, Michael Stipe,
Yeah, it's done by Adam Buxton.
Moby, Bruce Willis, Moby, Moby, Moby. Moby, Michael Stipe, Michael Chiklis, Moby, Bruce Willis, Michael Stipe, Moby, Michael Stipe, Michael Chiklis, Moby, Moby, Michael Stipe, Michael Chiklis, Moby, Moby, Johnny Malkovich, Bruce Willis, Michael Stipe, Moby, Moby, Michael Chiklis, Johnny Malkovich, Bruce Willis, Heston Blumenthal.
Very good.
Right, so Mark, wrapping up on the games news. Games podcast coming up this week. Any idea what you guys are going to be talking about?
It's going to be an hour-long eulogy to the Vita TV.
I suppose it's going to help once a month for you to have this release where you can just talk about games and not hardware.
Yeah, we're hopefully going to be talking about Saints Row 4 and The Wonderful 101 and basically pretty much anything that we have been playing.
When does that happen?
That should be out on the 14th.
Well, you need to sell it a bit more.
It's out on the 14th. Listen to it, guys. It's great.
Oh, yeah. I just got electric shock.
Oh, yeah, it sounded like you.
Ouch.
What was all that?
It's the electricity of that YouTube clip.
Yeah.
Maybe I've lost the
a lot of static from those birds.
Charge in the air around here.
Those arseless chaps do it for you every time.
And Steve, what's at the cinema?
Right, well, actually, loads. 4 films since last week, but I won't go through all of them just to save you for them. I'll pick 2. The first one is Rush, which Ed and I were talking about last week. I know Ed's very excited about this. Have you seen it yet, Ed?
No, so if you do
Okay,
significant, I know I don't.
I
when
will
I
not
say
give
spoilers, I know how the season ended.
I can't give you any spoilers. It's historic.
No, but if you ruin bits for me, I shall be cross.
I will not ruin anything for you. All I can tell you is I absolutely loved it. It was my film of the year, although I haven't seen Fast and the Furious 6 yet. So possibly that might tip it. But without seeing Fast and the Furious 6, it was my film of the year so far, at least. I thought it's absolutely brilliant. I mean, obviously, the fact it's based on a true story is in itself staggering. And whilst I'm not the greatest expert on Formula One history, as far as I know from having seen a documentary about the same subject recently, it's very, very accurate. It doesn't stray from the truth at all. It stays very true to reality. The level of period detail is staggering. I'm sure if you're a Formula One fanatic, you're going to love it just from the sheer attention to detail. I mean, I'm not convinced. I'm convinced that maybe they went back in a time machine and just filmed that season, because it just looks incredible at times.
Well, it's interesting. I was reading on the plane. I was reading the Top Gear magazine, and they had a little article sort of making of, and the level of it's obviously the real cars feature in some of the static shots. The actual 76 survivors do so, but a huge number of the cars for the mobile shots have been converted from Formula Renault, which look nothing like the cars that they've managed to successfully convey. And whoever has done that is an engineering genius and deserves a hug or something. But they're just it's sort of one of those things where it's British ingenuity at its best. If you want thousands of them, forget it. But if you want to make an astonishing rolling replica of a 70s Formula One car, this is the country to do it. It's unbelievable.
They do a great job. I mean, they cover the whole 76 season, plus periods before that too. So they kind of start off when both Lauda and Hunt are driving in Formula 3. So it goes back as far as that, and then covers their rivalry effectively, and then obviously centers mostly on the 76 season with Lauda's crash and his coming back after that. Incredibly, the racing sequences are really exciting. I mean, you kind of wish. I mean, back then the mortality rate in Formula One was staggering. There was a 20% chance you weren't going to survive the race.
Yeah, it was much better, wasn't it?
You wish that was what it was like now, because it would be so much better. The reality is, of course, that Lauda was the beginning of the modern age. He's a driver who was basically obsessed with things like setting up the car correctly, driving, without making any errors, without taking undue risk. Whereas Hunt was the quite complete opposite. He didn't give a monkey's about setting up the car. He took loads of unnecessary risk. He was borderline psychotic, but a lot more interesting. And unfortunately, modern Formula One now is just full of arbitrary rules and is driven by boring drivers like Vettel, who never make a mistake. And I couldn't bear watching. And I just sort of longed for the days when Formula One was exciting and interesting and dangerous. And it captures that.
This feeds back to an unpleasant reality that when we actually scratch the surface of civility, we do quite like our sports to be gladiatorial.
Yep, absolutely. I would, if there was gladiator sport. If there was gladiatorial fights going on now, I would be first in line to watch them. I would love to see two guys kill each other. Unfortunately,
I'm sure some of the places you've been, Steve, that's a possibility.
I'm sure Ed's got a link for that.
Yeah, Ed, there's a link for that.
Give me a minute. I'll find something.
So anyway, rounding up on Rush, what's your score, Steve?
I give it 9 out of 10. I thought it was an absolutely great film. Exciting, well made, well acted, just all round. I mean, Ron Howard's not perhaps the greatest director, but he's a very solid journeyman director, and he delivers here in terms of excitement, period detail, and storyline. It's great. Brilliant film.
Okay, and the other film that you saw?
Riddick, which is Vin Diesel, obviously famous for Fast and the Furious. They made a film back in 2000 called Pitch Black. Low budget, actually really good movie. I really enjoyed Pitch Black. I mean, it got a big following on DVD and home video afterwards. It wasn't a big hit at the cinema.
It was one of the very first DVDs I ever bought.
Yeah,
I have to say.
And Universal saw the numbers from the home video sales and thought, well, hang on, this is quite popular. So they made Chronicles of Riddick, which was a much bigger budget film that didn't do very well. And after a long period of time, they basically let the rights drop. And after the success of Fast and the Furious, what was called Fast 5 in the States, Vin Diesel basically said to Universal, I will do Fast and Furious 6. Actually, no, sorry, I told a lie. That wasn't what he did. It was when he did his cameo in Tokyo Drift. So I'll do the cameo in Tokyo Drift if you give me the rights to Riddick back, which they did. He then went out and financed Riddick himself. This film is financed through raising, mostly from selling overseas distribution rights. And he's made it himself with the original director, David Twohy, who made the other two films as well. And it's much more like the first film. It's gone back to basics. It takes place largely on one planet. There's monsters and this sort of stuff. It's okay. It isn't as good as Pitch Black, which I thought was a really great, fun little flick. It's fun in places. but it kind of feels like they're just doing this. It does feel like a remake of Pitch Black, effectively, and there's too much similarity between the two films for it to be truly original. It's amazing what they managed to do on a budget of 38 million. The effects look really good, but ultimately, it just felt too much of the same sort of second verse, same as the first. So probably I give that 6. I have to say, unlike Diana, possibly the worst film ever made.
Is this actually about the People's Princess, or is this?
Yeah, about
Yes.
Diana and her relationship with some Indian or a heart surgeon who she used to call Mr. Wonderful, and their love affair. And I saw the trailer for it before one of the films yesterday. I saw it looked excruciating.
I'm convinced this isn't a real film. I'm convinced this is some kind of a Chris Morris project or something.
I wish it was.
It'd be better if it was.
Oh, it would be brilliant if it was. Yeah. Anybody
Narrated by Alan Partridge.
Anybody want a bit of cake?
It stars Naomi Watts.
It's a made-up drug.
Sorry, it stars Naomi Watts, who obviously plays Diana. And she was being interviewed by Mark Commode on last week about it, and he was obviously suggesting it was a load of rubbish. And she walked out of the interview, so never mind.
Not our target audience, I don't think.
I don't know. As long as the credits rolled to the, I don't know if you ever saw it, the in Viz, the Princess Diana Memorial Breakfast Plate event. Which is still one of the finest things I've seen for sale.
Oh dear, I have to mute.
But Viz was always good for that.
I think we've lost Mark this week.
Yeah, I love that idea.
But no, you can buy one. They physically exist.
I'm doing it now. I'm gonna get drunk and buy one.
Welcome to my world.
It's bound to be 100% better than a UA.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I'm looking at some of these other the Viz promotional things they've done over the years. Bourbon Henge.
I remember that one.
Yeah. The Elvis Dam Busters Tutankhamun.
Oh, you're gonna have to stop now.
Can we stop? I want to go.
Biscuit nativity.
Oh, the biscuit nativities.
Biscuit nativity.
I told you.
Oh no.
Wafer of the Virgin Mary.
Sonic's tea cake is the devil.
What better biscuit to tempt us towards the dark side than a Sonic's tea cake with its gaudy jacket and gooey white centre? There's a mute button. Hang on.
I think I'm going to subscribe to Viz now.
Yeah.
Presumably, Phil, I ought to take a week off from one of these at some point. If you actually want one of these that doesn't just end up in this sort of surrealist nightmare. Right.
The pink wafer is the Virgin Mary. With its slim figure and meek and mild nature, this tea time treat simply glows with that just given birth look. And is pink like a lady should be.
Have you seen how you order it, though? Please rush me the first part of the scene. The straw by second class.
I understand that Cresswell's Biscuit Nativity is sold by instalments, and it may be August before I receive any actual biscuits. And then I'll probably be the shortcake or the thick roll or one of the sturdier, duller biscuits. By the time the coconut mellow arrives, I'm more than likely gone off the idea.
Please keep debiting my card. Then right at the bottom, I
Yeah.
do not wish to be saved by the healing love of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Oh God. Right, segue from that.
Phil, that's going to be a nightmare to try and even cut around.
Unfortunately, that wraps up our IFA Extended Sausage Edition of the podcast. It is an extended edition. Currently looking at the clock, I'll be lucky if I can get that down to an hour and a half, to be honest. Anyway, that wraps everything up. My thanks to Mark Botwright,
I deny all accusations.
Mark Hodgkinson,
Imagine the size of his balls.
Ed Selley,
Right, you fucker, I'm doing the washing up.
and Steve Withers.
That is the
Sorry.
that is the reason bald-headed men are uptight.
You're going to have to do that again.
First forever.
That is the reason. Off! Will you shut the up, Mark?
Normally complain that I don't talk enough. so-
Jesus, shut up!
Oh, now you know how it feels.
Yeah, fair enough. That is the reason the bald-headed men are uptight.
Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter at AVForums. You can also like us on Facebook.com. And thank you very much for liking us. We went over the 10,000 mark this week, so thank you very much for that. You can also bookmark AVForums.com for the latest reviews, news and videos. I'm Phil Hinton. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you again next Tuesday.
Tuesday?
Slick as